Well, a lot of news coming out of Europe this evening, all of it bad. Let's start off in Berlin, Germany, where a truck just crashed into a crowd, killing at least 9 people. An evening of outdoor Christmas shopping turned to sudden death and destruction when this large truck barreled into the unsuspecting crowds in Berlin. At least 9 people died as the truck tore through tables and wooden stands. Many others were reported injured. Dozens of ambulances rushed to the scene and heavily armed police patrolled the area. German police say they've arrested a man believed to be the driver of the truck. It happened in the center of the German capital at a popular Christmas market. Police are investigating whether this was an accident or an attack. In November, the State Department issued an alert warning Americans traveling abroad in Europe to be wary of large gatherings that could attract terrorist strikes. And there were specific warnings about going to shopping malls and holiday markets.
Either of these?
And in Ankara, the capital of Turkey, this gunman killed a Russian ambassador in cold blood. The gunman reportedly yelled, "Don't forget Aleppo, do not forget Syria." Russians immediately labeled it a terror attack. The gunman was identified as a police officer, and that is how he got so close to the victim, where he's standing right behind. He is, of course, referring to the fact that the Russians are working with the Assad regime as it fights to retake Aleppo. It's turned into a humanitarian disaster with thousands killed, hundreds of thousands evacuated, and atrocities apparently happening in broad daylight. All right, let's do this in 2 parts. The Berlin story first, Congressman. About 3 weeks ago, there were arrests made in Strasbourg where apparently through intel that they were hearing accounts that people were targeting large areas with potentially trucks or whatever else. We've seen this play out in Nice. We've seen this play out in various places, unfortunately, around the globe. Do you think it's a sign that ISIS has been so crippled they've now resorted to literally trucks, or is this just a broader jihad to say, pick up a knife, get behind of a car, do whatever you have to do, just wreak havoc?
I think it's hard to know whether it's a result of their defeats on the battlefield in Aleppo and presumably in Mosul coming down the pike. But we live in a dangerous world. It hasn't gotten less dangerous recently for Europe, that's for sure. And everyone has to be on their toes. However, we here in America need to understand that the incidences of terroristic activity in our country is minuscule. You'd sooner get hit by lightning than be a victim in a terror attack.
To this end, though, obviously, the pressure will be on Angela Merkel in terms of what she does in Germany. We all remember the position she took where she opened her doors to Syrian refugees. We have no idea, other than the driver of the truck is now in custody, so that should be extremely helpful in terms of from an intel standpoint. But apparently they're concerned that it is not just relegated to Berlin, that this could be more broad. But nonetheless, the identity, the nationality, there's competing information as to whether or not it was directed by ISIS. You know, this will have consequences more than just a terrible terror attack, but you know, where they go from here. You know, and it's just another domino in Europe here as to the concerns, you know, about where this population goes for relief. And there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that, you know, are being driven out by the end of a gun out of Syria. So it's a mess.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I do think that there are real concerns here about terror attacks as well. And I would disagree vehemently. I do not think that you could tell the American public that at this point they have a right to feel safe here, because people simply don't. And you can point to statistics as much as you want, but you look at the election of Donald Trump and you know that people feel unsafe. And this kind of incident is going to increase the rhetoric, and it is going, we've already seen his statement today, and it's going to increase the fear over here. And there's going to be a real effort on the part of both the new administration and Congress to address this, and rightly so. So, you know, this is not just an issue for Europe. It's not just an issue for Germany. It's not just an issue over there. It's an issue over here as well. And the American public are feeling this, and I think we're going to see that played out in the new administration.
Professor, one thing we shouldn't do is create hysteria in America. We should make our decisions based on facts and based on the amounts of threats that actually present themselves to the average American. We don't want the country to go all the way crazy and do things against our values of privacy and freedom of movement and freedom of worship, because we're whipped up into some hysteria. Yes, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. It always has been, always will be, but hysteria doesn't help.
Are you claiming I'm being hysterical, or who's being hysterical? Who are you saying is being hysterical?
No, potential dialogue.
An argument that says
no, I didn't understand
that
the context in which you brought up the term hysteria.
I want to get to one thing that President-elect Trump did say, Andrew, and that is, when talking about the Turkey assassination, and just so you know, basically the cop of Turkish descent standing behind him and right in living color walked up and he shot him. He ended up dying en route to the hospital. He was eventually, their words, neutralized here, but he made it clear that this was in response to what has happened to the people in Aleppo and in Syria. And I'm going to extrapolate here because of his perceived belief that which is backed up, that Russia has certainly aided Assad along with Iran. But nonetheless, in the last hour, Andrew, President-elect Trump said, in part, while giving condolences, as other world leaders have as well, he said this is the result of radical Islamic terrorists. There's no evidence at all to this point. Now, it might be borne out, but Turkey hasn't said that whatsoever. I don't know it is or it is not, but so far, there is no corroboration. And because he hasn't been reading his security briefings, by his own words, he hasn't done this, we don't know, given how he conducted his campaign with different alternative realities, as he's working off of actionable intelligence, he's going against what the intel says, or he's just basically divining whatever he thinks. But words now have consequences. You got to be careful with this stuff.
His statement that just came out about the Germany attack is even more hyperbolic and even more divisive. And he says, innocent civilians were murdered in the streets as they prepared to celebrate the Christmas holiday. ISIS and other Islamic terrorists continually slaughter Christians in their communities and places of worship as part of their global jihad. These terrorists and their regional and worldwide networks must be eradicated from the face of the earth, a mission we will carry out with all freedom-loving partners. So in that statement, he's not concretely saying this was ISIS, but he's painting with a very broad brush, and he's also putting it in religious terms. This is the kind of thing that makes people who watch Arab and Western relationships, or sorry, Muslim and Western relationships, think about the Crusades when everything was put in religious terms. And
again,
the Obama administration,
to your point, so no one forgets, same guy, Andrew, right, who talked about Muslim registries, right? Mm-hmm. And we've heard from every intel agency, you know, the greatest recruiting tool a very weakened ISIS could ever have is somebody basically saying Muslims are the enemy. He didn't say that today, but where he went, and again, my concern is, I've never seen a president do this, a president-elect even, without the evidence yet to say it. Give it 24 hours, let it play out, then call it for what it is. I got no problems if he calls him radical Islamic terrorists, but first make sure that's what it is.
One of the reasons why President Obama has been as careful and as cautious as he has with language related to Muslim extremism is because he does not want it to be seen as a Christian versus Muslim divide. Even President Bush was very careful to make those points in the days and years after 9/11, and it seems as though the president-elect has no such qualms about painting it in terms of very...
Can I just say, I'm sorry, pardon me for disagreeing, but what is incorrect about ISIS and other Islamic terrorists continually slaughter Christians in their communities and places of worship as part of their global jihad? That is precisely
but
what we
in
have
Berlin
seen
today?
No, but he's not saying that's what happened in Berlin.
But he's putting it in a statement in reaction to Berlin.
Yes, he's saying he's sorry for the people who suffered and the people who died, and he's saying innocent people are dying during the Christmas holiday. ISIS and other Islamic terrorists continually slaughter Christians in their communities, places of worship. That is a fact.
I'll answer your question. To me, if I just read that statement and I didn't see the newscast or anything else, I'd swear a guy took a Ryder truck and drove right into a church as people were praying. They were at a mall shopping in a popular street to do shopping for the holidays.
It was a Christmas holiday display boutique, whatever it was, mall. They were shopping. Donald Trump, I'm sorry.
Places of worship.
But he's not saying today it happened. He's saying they have been
again,
continually
you
slaughtering.
followed what has happened in the
But
last
that's
year.
true. Let's just give him
But
credit.
why
When
is there a
that's
reason,
true.
though, Jeannie, why no other president in our memory
he's the
has
only
ever...
president-elect.
Well,
And there's another point.
no, but
if we're
I'm
just,
trying to finish what I'm going to say. 1 second, Congressman.
Sure.
To me, the point, both with saying, I'm sure that we already know the guy in Turkey was crazy, and what he did was horribly reprehensible, and I have no qualms that he's been neutralized. But why don't you just wait to know that he is a radical Islamic terrorist? And then why don't you wait in Germany to find out that this wasn't just some unhinged guy who was literally a lunatic? It had nothing to do with an attack on Christians in houses of worship.
Can I say, I agree with you exactly on the Turkey thing. I do agree with you.
Even Germany,
he overstepped his...
Like,
he
know what
didn't
you're
say
talking
anything incorrect about Germany.
Actually,
he didn't say anything incorrect about Germany. Turkey, you're absolutely right.
Trump's remarks were made in the context of a response to the truck attack in Germany. An equally true factual statement could be that radical Islamic terrorists blow up mosques filled with Muslim people. But to put that in a response to the German truck attack would indicate that they were attacking Muslims, just like President-elect Trump's remarks saying that this was an attack on Christians is equally yet unfounded by fact.
I'm just saying, you got to be more careful now
You're
with this stuff.
absolutely right about
and words
Turkey,
actually
but
matter.
But Germany, look at the statement because he's not incorrect about Germany. How's that for a double negative?
I think if you read it and you didn't parse through the words, you would have swore somebody drove into a church.
But
They're shopping.
We can read carefully, Richard, and give him credit where it's
far
due.
too much credit to the rest, not our brilliant audience. But okay, coming up next, the Russian hack and how Team Trump is increasingly at odds with not just the intelligence agency, but a growing number of folks on Capitol Hill, including many in his own party.